Hi friends and welcome back to my channel, and if you're new here, hello. My name's George Agambar and I'm a UK music producer. As some of you have noticed, I use Kali monitors. I've been using the Kali LP6s for the past couple of years and I'm really excited to be making this video today. Kali have recently released their upgraded and improved version of their 8-inch premium monitors. These are called the second wave of the IN-8s. Today I'll be reviewing them. I'll be talking a bit about why I chose Kali, a bit about the company, the specs and design of the IN-8s, how they compare to the LP6s, the improvements that have been made with the second wave, how they perform in the real world, and a bit about why they may be suitable for you. I'll also leave timestamps in the description so you can skip ahead to the review and certain parts that you want to watch, but I promise that the design and specs bit really isn't too geeky. Just as a bit of background, I bought the Kali LP6 monitors in 2018 when I was wanting to upgrade some very basic monitors. I live near Anderton's, which is a music shop in Guildford, and you may have come across their YouTube channel. Not only do they stock a really broad range of monitors, but they also have a dedicated listening room. So I went and I listened to so many different monitors. I listened to Adams, to KRKs, to Yamahas, to Genelecs, and of course to the Kali LP6s. I was looking to spend around £300 to £600. I was 17 at the time and just becoming serious about producing music, and so that seemed like quite a sensible budget to me. I preferred the Kalis because they sounded so clear and transparent, and their value for money was absolutely tremendous. I think that, in my opinion, the Kalis outperformed the other manufacturers within that price range. So I was essentially an early adopter of this brand. They were founded in 2018 in California by a group of audio industry experts who decided to use their skills to produce their own range of gear. Their ethos is to produce high-end audio gear at affordable prices. Currently, they have two series of monitors. The LP series, which is essentially their entry-level monitors, and the IN series, which is their premium monitors. Nate Baglios, the marketing director of Kali, saw one of my YouTube videos and commented on it, and I was astounded by this. I was just so shocked that he had seen one of my videos and commented back telling him how much I was enjoying and loving my LP6s. They've then invited me to review the IN-8s and to see whether I think that they fulfill the promises of their advertising campaign and whether they suit my needs as a home producer. As a disclaimer, I did contact them to say that I would only give my honest opinion and compare them to the LP6s that I use now. They were very happy with this and have taken no editorial control over this video. At the time of making this video, I didn't have access to any of the published specs. However, Nate did email me letting me know all the changes and improvements that they've made within the second wave of IN-8s. Any technical errors, failure to understand the physics, or poor product videography is my own. So let's have a look at the IN-8s. The LP and IM range of monitors share some similarities. The backs of the monitors are broadly similar. There is a power input for a mains lead, a kettle lead, or an ICE Type 13 lead. The monitors have a voltage detection circuit, and so they will automatically adjust to your local mains voltage. There are 3 different signal input connections you can choose from, depending on what interface you use. There's a balanced XLR input, a balanced 1/4 inch jack TRS type, although it will also accept an unbalanced jack, and an RCA input, which is amplified to line level signal using a dip switch setting. There is a volume dial. It's recommended that you set this at 0 and then adjust the volume using either your computer or your interface. There is then the very important dip switch section. There are diagrams across the top of the monitor which show different positions you may want to put the monitor in and different dip switch settings. And these settings change the EQ of the monitor to compensate for things like boundary effects depending upon your position of the monitor. And these are controlled by the first 3 dip switches. There are then EQ settings independent of position, and this allows you to boost or cut the bass and the treble by 2 decibels either way, and that's controlled by dip switches 4 to 7. And the 8th dip switch is the RCA dip switch, and that controls the power in case you want to use an RCA lead. What's new on the IN-8 second wave is that there's an extra diagram and EQ setting for if you want to place the monitor horizontally, and we'll talk a bit more about why that's possible later on. So at this point you may be thinking, are these settings a gimmick? They're not. I've tried different positions and different dip switch settings, and the ones that worked the best and sounded the best were the ones that Callie recommended every single time. It's round the front of the monitors that we see the main differences, although this may not be too obvious at first glance. The front-facing port and the little blue light is the same. The front-facing port minimises any boundary effect from walls and corners and makes positioning less crucial. Its unusual shape is designed to prevent chuffing. The main difference between the LP and the IN series is the number of drivers. The LP series is a 2-way design. There are 2 drivers, the woofer and the tweeter. The IN series is the 3-way design. There are 3 drivers, the woofer, the mid-range driver, and the tweeter. And this is a crucial difference. It's what makes the IN series a real step up from the LP series, and why it can compare to monitors that are several times its price. In 2-way design monitors, the 2 drivers cover the frequencies from 40 Hz to 21 kHz. The woofer takes the low and the low mid frequencies, and the tweeter takes the high mids and the high frequencies, and they share the bit in between. And this midpoint between the 2 drivers and the frequencies that they cover is called the crossover, or the crossover point. The IN-8s have different crossover points because of the extra new mid-range driver. The low frequency crossover is at 330 Hz, and the mid-frequency crossover is at 3 kHz. The result is that each of the drivers have a smaller frequency range to cover, so have less work to do, which means that we get a better sound. The mid-range frequencies, where most information is conveyed, is covered by a single driver in the IN-8s, resulting in much greater clarity without having a crossover point in the middle of it, like 2-way designs. But that's the same for all 3-way monitors. What makes the IN-8s different and so clever is their design and the placement of the 3 drivers. It's a 3-way monitor within 2 components. You have the tweeter mounted in the mid-range driver and the woofer directly below. The combination of the tweeter and another single driver within a single unit is called coaxial design because both drivers share an axis. Now traditionally, tweeters have been mounted within woofers, and that's mainly due to space constraints and magnet strength available at the time. But this can cause some problems. And that's because the woofer has to move backwards and forwards quite a lot to produce the low frequencies. And that means that the high frequency waves being produced by a coaxially mounted tweeter get altered as a result. It can add some harmonic frequencies and unwanted effects. And this is called intermodulation distortion. By placing the tweeter within the mid-range driver, there is much less distortion, and that's because the mid-range driver moves a much smaller amount than the woofer. And by having a separate mid-range driver, you unburden the woofer and the tweeter, so there's less total harmonic distortion as well, and that's really cool. But there's something even cooler about this design that I think is absolutely genius. Not only are the mid-range driver and the tweeter coaxial, but they're also coincident. Coincident means that the origin of the sound wave is from the same point. This essentially means that our ears hear the sound from each driver arriving at exactly the same time. We can't tell that the sound is coming from two different components. And it doesn't stop there. Kali have chosen a low frequency crossover of 330 Hz. The distance between the mid-range and the tweeter and the woofer is less than a quarter of a wavelength at 330 Hz. And this is crucial. That's because at a quarter of a wavelength or lower, our ear can't tell that sound is coming from two separate sources. If the crossover point was any higher, our ear would be able to determine that sound is coming from both the woofer and the coaxial mid-range driver and tweeter. But at this distance and this crossover point, it all sounds like it's coming from the same place. So with this design, our ears hear the woofer as being at the exact same position as the mid-range driver and tweeter. We hear all three elements coming from the same place at the same time. And that's why we can turn these monitors on their side or use them upside down. It's a brilliant application of some amazing physics. Another thing to note is that the mid-range driver acts as a waveguide for the tweeter. It's circular as opposed to the usual flattened shape. And this means that the tweeter's positioning at ear level isn't as crucial as it is with other monitors. It's important to say at this point that there were criticisms of the first wave of IN-8s, which was still a very highly regarded pair of studio monitors. And Kali have really listened to this feedback and to what people wanted, and they've done an amazing job of improving the second wave. So, what improvements have Kali made to the IN-8s? The first wave of IN-8s had a degree of self-noise or hiss. Kali have reduced that by 12 decibels, and this second wave is essentially silent. I can't hear the monitors in my room at all, and this is all due to a new amplifier circuit. The second wave of monitors also have lighter weight cones, and this means that we get a better transient response. And that's because the cones have less inertia, so can move more quickly and more responsively. The second wave is also 3 decibels louder and has huge improvements in total harmonic distortion. Kali really have done a tremendous design job with the IN-8s. It's a 3-way monitor, which are extremely rare in this price range, and the way they've designed it means that it performs to a level of monitor that should be many times the price. In the real world, monitors need to be clear and transparent to allow us to listen critically and make decisions based on what we're hearing. We need to be able to hear the good, the bad, and the ugly, however much that may discourage us. And so there are two aspects to this that monitors need to deliver on. Firstly, there's clarity, being able to differentiate and pick out different instruments and sounds. And secondly, there's transparency, hearing a true representation of the sound. In terms of clarity, the IN-8s really delivered. I've been using my LP6s to mix on and to listen to music on for the past couple of years, and I've really become tuned into their sound. However, when I was listening through the IN-8s, I was hearing things that I've never heard before. I was listening to Give Me Shelter by the Rolling Stones, and I heard the off-mic whoop from Mick Jagger where Mary Clayton sings her Run. And when I listened to Money, Money, Money by ABBA, I was hearing new bits of instrumentation and new little riffs that I've never heard before. And then I listened to Chandelier by Sia, and I heard Sia's voice in a way that I've never heard before. It really was an eye-opener. In terms of transparency, the IN-8s also really deliver. Transparency can be underwhelming. We like to listen to music for enjoyment over systems and speakers that sound musical. But we like working on monitors that give us a true representation of the recorded sound. I've been lucky enough to visit Metropolis Studios in London and listen to mixes in their well-treated rooms over monitor systems that cost thousands and thousands of pounds. And don't get me wrong, it sounds absolutely brilliant. However, you come away feeling somewhat underwhelmed by the musical experience, in that you can hear everything crystal clearly, and again, it's all amazing. However, perhaps it's not the most exciting thing you've ever heard in your life. And that's when I realised We want speakers to be musical, enjoyable and exciting. But monitors, they're a tool for the job. We need them to be as clear and as transparent as possible to allow us to do our jobs to the best of our abilities. What really struck me with the Kali IN-8s is that it was coming very close to the sound that I was hearing in the well-treated and equipped studio rooms. Now, it's never going to be perfect in my home, but these sounded very clear and very transparent. And the difference really is very apparent when comparing them to the sound that you get from the LP6s. The mid-range on the IN-8s is absolutely fantastic. And I think that the mid-range is really important because it's where a lot of instruments lie and a lot of the main elements of mixes and songs lie. And you're going to have to trust me with this. As we go along our journeys, we get better at hearing transparency and being able to listen to how transparent a monitor sounds. But it is enough to be said that these are very, very transparent sounding monitors and should allow us to create mixes that translate well onto different speakers and different systems. So is bigger better? The received wisdom is that an 8-inch monitor is probably too big for a small room. And perhaps that's true in terms of volume. But what an 8-inch monitor does give us is a really, really good low-end response, especially with the Kali IN-8s. And I think that this is really important, especially if you're a modern music producer or audio engineer making hip-hop or pop music. And that's because our mainstream music market is becoming more and more bassy. Just listen to any of Billie Eilish's music. There's some really, really gorgeous low end in there. And so having this extended low end and better low frequency response is really useful to us. When setting these monitors up, I was really happy with them and I didn't run into any problems at all. I've tried putting them both on my desk and on speaker stands. For the time being, I've decided to keep them on speaker stands just because I can separate them a bit more and have them a bit further apart, so I find that I got a slightly better stereo image from doing this. But in terms of frequency response, the monitors sounded identical in any position that I put them in because of the boundary EQ dip switches on the back of the monitor. So let's talk about price. In the UK, these monitors are going to be priced around about £399 per monitor. So that's around about £800 per pair. And that's quite similar in the US too, where they're priced at $798 per pair. And I appreciate that this can be a big investment for some, but you really are getting a lot for your money. The IN-8s are really, really competitive with other monitors that are priced much higher than them. Kali really are a very innovative company that makes some great audio gear. Are they suitable for home producers? Yes. Are they suitable for studios? Yes. And would I buy them when I was starting out? I really think that I would, knowing all that I know now. Kali are the newcomers to the audio world. I'm 20 years old and I've been producing music seriously since Kali were founded. So to my mind, they've always been there. They're not the newbies. However, I can appreciate that for people who've been in the game a bit longer, perhaps it's a bit worrying seeing and investing in a new company. You know that computer world saying that no one's ever been criticised for buying a Hewlett-Packard. But that changes with time, and I think that Kali are positioning themselves in a really strong place in the monitor market. They are producing quality gear, they've got a fantastic philosophy, and they're a responsive company. It's giving people like me the ability to experience high-end audio gear at affordable prices. I really genuinely believe that you can't go far wrong with Kali. You know that you're going to get a great product and you know that you're going to get a lot for your money. It's made by experts who care about delivering high-end audio gear and creating something incredible, which is what I think they've done with the second wave of the IN-8s.